On this week's The Next Interview with our host Doland White, you'll hear Jim Matuga, founder and CEO of Interaction Media, explain exactly how influence really works and why the strongest leaders build cultures of confident, empowered followers who drive trust, alignment, and results. Now here's Doland.
Welcome to the Next Interview Show podcast. I'm Doland White, as the announcer mentioned when we came through the front door. And every podcast I say this because I'm extremely blessed to have the opportunity to talk to some brilliant leaders. And I'm going to spend some time today with, coming into the podcast, I didn't ask you this, but so I'm going to take a stab at it. It's Jim Matuga, I think is
That's
how
right. Yeah, you got it.
What a lucky guess. To get that right coming in. There's nothing terrible than screwing up a guest's name as you're coming through the door. But for every podcast, it's just the very first thing I want to do is I always start and end with gratitude. So I want to start with just a moment of gratitude. And I know that kind of pre-show we were talking about your day and that you live it's a full life day. And there's 1,000 other things going on in your world. You're going to hang out with me for a half hour or so to talk about leadership and your business and what you do and offer insights to help people be better. So I just want to tell you thank you for stopping what you're doing to come hang out with me. So thanks for
Thank you, Doland. Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah, I think we'll have some fun. So
Yes.
So just for a brief introduction, Jim is co-founder and CEO of Interaction Media. I'm not going to say any more about it. I'll let you do that. But I love the book. I got the book and started into the book. I'm about this far into it. I got about this more to go.
Awesome.
And I love a voracious reader. Love to read. The book is called Humble Influence: The Strength of True Fellowship. We'll talk more about that as we kind of go along.
Yeah.
But I'd like to use just kind of the first few minutes of the podcast just for those who've not met you to get to know you a little bit and talk about your journey. And always curious, what prompted you to why did you write the book? What prompted you to tell this story?
Yeah. Thank you, Doland, again for having me. My name is Jim Matuga, and I am the founder of Interaction Media. We're a marketing agency based in Morgantown, West Virginia. And we do all the things that you think a traditional marketing agency would be doing in 2025 and 2026. We're video forward, and we focus a lot on digital, but we also spend time in the traditional media channels as well. But to start with, I have to go back when I was 8 years old. And we're on a podcast now, and I used to love sports when I was growing up, and I loved radio. Sure. And so I had an obsession with radios and stereos and little recorders and so forth. And I used to have conversations just like you and I are having when I was 8, 9, 10 years old with my buddies, and I would interview them just like we're doing awesome. Here. So I didn't know it then, but I was actually a podcaster, back in the 70s.
Oh, and that's fantastic.
So fast forward, into 1984, I was a college student at West Virginia University. I was pretty much lost. I thought I was going to go into business school because I thought that's what, I was supposed to do. But I was really lost, and I was kind of stumbling my way through. And one morning I decided I've had it. I'm going to go drop out of school. So I walked down to what I thought was the bursar's office at West Virginia University here in Morgantown, West Virginia. Sure. And I'm standing in the lobby of this big, beautiful building, a historic building on campus. And this elderly gentleman walked up to me and he said, "Young man, you look like you're lost." And I said, "I am, sir, in more ways than one." And he said, "Well, what do you mean?" I said, "Well, I'm really trying to find my way to the bursar's office, and I don't think I'm in the right building." And he said, "What's the purpose?" And I said, "Well, I'm dropping out of school because I'm just lost there too. I have no idea what I'm supposed to be doing. I have no purpose." And so he called me into his room. It turns out his name was Dean Joseph Gluck. He was a retired dean of student life at the time. And they had an office for him there in the building. And he asked me a few questions. And after a couple of prompts from him, he asked me a question that changed my life. Doland. And he said, have you ever thought about a career in advertising? And
Wow.
when he uttered those words, the light popped in my mind. And I thought of like, wow, what does that even look like? And so after a few minutes, I found myself in the dean of the journalism school at the time, the Pearlie Isaac Reed School of Journalism. That's where the advertising department was held back in those days. And I went in about an hour and a half's time from my heart set on dropping out of college to walking out of the dean's office of the journalism school with an application to the Pearlie Isaac Reed Journalism School. And that set the trajectory of my career on its head. It was amazing. Right. And from then on, I was into advertising, marketing, media. I just was a student of it. And that's where I started. And so I've been working in the media business. I've been lucky enough to start out as a copywriter at a local radio station, work for the newspaper, TV station, direct mail, you name it. And then along the way, I was exposed to the World Wide Web and the internet and what that meant for media. And so I kind of grew up as the whole media world was being turned on its ear, and got to see that. And I remember those conversations of, the publisher saying, hey, I don't think anybody's going to want to read the newspaper on a computer. And I'm like, yes, it's going to be way better than that, actually. So seeing all the iterations of media has been just awesome. And then, like I said, back in 2011, so I'm in my 15th year now, we started Interaction Media. I started it at my kitchen table on a computer that I bought off of what was Craigslist. Yeah. I think Craigslist is still a thing, but I bought my first computer for my business. It was a used iMac, and that's how I started my business, just myself and a computer that I bought used off of Craigslist.
I love that story. It's funny how we think when we've got the world by the tail and we kind of go, maybe not quite so much. And these opportunities pop up in our lives that take us down paths we never expected. Just never, ever expected. Yeah, I was going to be a professional musician, and hence the keyboard, the piano sitting behind me.
Oh my gosh. Are you a piano player?
I play about 20 instruments, and that's one of them.
Oh my goodness. We should jam sometime. That's my passion too, is music. I love music. I'm a drummer.
All right. Another podcast. There we go. Right there. Drummers are critically important. Drummers,
that's right.
Bass players you can sacrifice. Drummers you cannot. So
I saw a great meme though, Doland. I got to share with this. It said, you could tell about the quality of a person by how they treat the bass player.
We can completely digress on that conversation today.
That's great.
Oh, that's fun. So, or the accordion player. That's another.
That's right.
We can talk about, but we won't. So one of the things that I want to kind of go back to, and then we'll kind of shift into some conversations around leadership and talk a little bit about the story behind the book, but. One of the things, and you touched on it, about being video forward. And there's a description when I was kind of doing research on your bio and kind of figuring out, who is this Jim guy? And it talked about, it described and it caught my eye, having been an ex-CEO of a marketing firm, with a purpose-driven marketing agency.
Yes.
And I loved that term. So I kind of wanted to just explore that, because there's a components in leadership. We could spend our whole time talking about marketing, which we'll do a little bit here, but kind of talk a little bit about what being a purpose-driven agency is all about.
Yeah. Well, thank you for asking the question. And I'm happy to share my thoughts on that.
Yeah, please.
It hasn't been always this way. I always thought, there was an end game, and it was kind of like he who dies with the most toys wins kind of thing,
Sure.
And so I guess it was about 8 years ago, I had this revelation that I really wanted to do something different. I was, I was successful by all means, had all the trappings of success that you would think, but there was something missing. And I was exposed to a guy. His name was Bruce Lane. He's still a dear friend and still my business coach. And he expressed this idea and introduced me to this concept of business as ministry. Mm-hmm. I'd never heard those words before. I always thought, like, I'm a person of faith, and I thought the mission field was in Guatemala or Honduras or something of that nature. But what he told me was, actually, your business can be your ministry. And I explored that and have been exploring that for years now. And what that means to me and the purpose-driven business, purpose-driven agency is that I am trying to use my business as my ministry. So while I'm on earth, while I'm at the fortunate position of leading a company, I want to take the talents that I've been blessed with, the gifts and the abilities, not just with myself, but my team. I want to train those and equip those people that are under my tutelage, under my care, to be incredible leaders. I want to train them up to learn how to do business the right way, to do things that are honoring to God. And that's the driver for me. And so now when I wake up in the morning, I am absolutely driven, mission driven, purpose driven by this notion that I'm doing something that's very important, not just for our clients and serving them well, but also serving my team, training them and equipping them, training them how to be out in the community, to lead and be involved with civic organizations and lead civic organizations, be in leadership roles here in the community. Even when I have a very young team, by most accounts, they're so awesome. They're really dug into this idea of having a purpose and making sure that they understand that their work really is important and really matters, and they matter as people.
Yeah, I love that, Jim, because I think I want to talk a little bit about fellowship as we're kind of heading into that, because I love the second half of the title, The Strength of True Fellowship. Yeah. Because that's I think there's a lot of leaders, and for leaders that are listening to the podcast now, that's one of the important things, is that when we are together within the body of a company. I talk, Jim, when I coach to executives. I told you earlier, this is your podcast, so I very rarely talk about what I do.
No, this is great. I love it.
When I coach executives, one of the things that we talk about is there's no such thing as work-life balance. There's only life.
Yeah.
And a component of that life is that fellowship that we develop inside of work, which extends into family, friends, relatives, influence, community. So I love that you're spending time in there. That's a much broader umbrella for that 9-pound word that you and I call leadership, right?
I think that, in a world, especially here in America, but I've been on podcasts and other shows like yours across the planet, quite frankly. Yeah. And this notion of, true followership, and how there is such an emphasis placed on leadership. We tell everybody, especially our children, you got to be the leader. You got to be in charge. Take control. You're nothing if you're not the leader. But where are the followers? And so the idea that I'm trying to talk about with leadership today is, it's okay to be a follower. Not everybody is equipped or wants to be the leader. Right. But how do we take followership and elevate that? Okay. And so what I mean by that, there is a stigma of being a follower sometimes. And I would say a lot of times. Agree. And when I'm talking about this subject, people are just like, wow, yeah, I've never really thought about that. But if I could share just a little story, Doland.
Please.
I was having a conversation with a woman who read the book recently, and she said, Jim, I was meant to read this book. And she was retired, but she was really active in her church. And she said, I get burnt out because I don't feel like I'm making a difference. I'm showing up. I'm not, the leader of this or the leader of that, but I just go in and I do my part at this church that I volunteer at, but I feel like I'm not really making a difference. And she said, I read your book and I realized that the people in the middle are the ones who are actually empowering the leaders to do their work and achieve their mission. So my work is important. And I'm thinking, wow, how did you not know that? But yes, thank you for
Yes.
because that's, I can't help everybody, but what I can do is help them understand that that their work matters and that they are important. And, we're created on this earth to do something. Everybody,
Yeah.
I do a lot of volunteer work with people with disabilities, and I look at them and I say, guys,
Awesome.
you guys have tremendous abilities. I love it. I see it in every one of them, and I'm a believer that God has equipped everybody to be what they are supposed to be. We just have to tap into that. We have to uncover it and accept, like, hey, this is where we are. Let's be great at it. Let's be people of excellence, no matter what we're doing.
Yeah, I love that, and I think that's it's a man of similar beliefs. I love that because I believe firmly that. So it's one of the things inside of any organization, and I think leaders lose that. I love your point. Every person inside of an organization brings value.
That's right. Yeah.
Every person with a heartbeat brings value, and every person leads in one way, in one shape or form. They're either
That's
leading
true.
up,
Yeah.
leading sideways, leading other people in their team. So, and I think that's it's interesting you mentioned it, because that word leader gets hung up on those that are in the C-suite, or those with a VP title, or that's the
right.
leader, and everybody else is just doing what they're told to go do. And that's not the purpose.
Yeah.
Everybody has to lead.
Absolutely. So, Doland, you asked me, what inspired the book, Humble Influence, The Strength of True Followership. And I would just tell you, it's the craziest thing. And please don't think that I'm a procrastinator when I tell you this, but this book was born from an idea that I had back in April of 2007.
Wow.
That was 18 years
Fantastic.
plus ago. Yeah. And what happened was I was at a leadership conference right here on the campus of West Virginia University. And there was a couple of hundred people in the room. And we had a great speaker that day. He was a keynote. His name was James Kouzes. He had a book out that time called A Leader's Legacy. And it was a great leadership book. And I wanted to hear him speak. And
sure.
The whole day was centered around equipping leaders, and as I looked around the room, there was about half of the people in the room were people like me, like middle managers. Like we were kind of leading, but we were really following somebody else's direction, and the whole time that I was sitting there, I kept thinking, why is there nothing like this for people like me? Like, I'm in the wrong room. I don't get me wrong. I wanted to hear the message. I wanted to hear that content, but I kept thinking I need a conference on how to be a great follower. So on the drive home that day, I was talking to a friend of mine, and I was telling him about the conference. He said, "Jim, you need to write a book on followership." And so I came home that night, and that night is when I opened the document. And back then it had a different title, but that became the impetus for Humble Influence. But what I learned, Dolan, was in writing the book, I had written 2 marketing books, during the course of my career.
Sure.
But this was going to be different. This is a leadership book. And I kept thinking, man, I'm actually not equipped to write this book yet. And so during the course of my career, interactions, I kept going back to it, and I would, add, quotes and, add, scripture that I thought was, relevant to being a great follower, and how it all ties into leadership. And so last year in the fall of 2024 is when I finally decided to, let's get this thing done. And I started really typing away, and had a good year in business last year. And it freed me up a little bit to do some extra writing. So every morning and every evening I was writing and finally got the daggum thing done. And then I worked with my publisher called Spirit Media, and they helped me put the book together. So it's been an awesome journey. And like I said, it's an 18-year project, but it wasn't like I worked on it continually. I just had to learn and understand what it meant to be an effective follower, and the importance of being a follower in the leadership journey.
Yeah, I love that story, Jim, because I think there's this there's a perception. I smile being a co-procrastinator. Just to we'll call it as we see it. Being a co-procrastinator myself in the middle of working through a book now. And
that's awesome.
And I think that there's an opportunity. There's who was it that used to say every wine shall know its time, or there's a parable around that.
Yes,
and
exactly.
And I think that there is an accumulation of life experience and knowledge that we gain by
Yeah.
doing and by working with other people
Yeah.
that add that depth and that richness that then when you bring forth a book, like it's a great book, when you bring forward the book, then it brings forward insights that you otherwise wouldn't have done.
That's true.
'Cause it was,
Exactly.
it
Yep.
was too, it was too much. It was too much too soon. So,
Exactly. Exactly. It
yeah.
was the idea was planted in my heart. It just took a while to get it out.
Yeah. And I love that. I
Yeah.
smile because
Yeah.
I collect quotes and sayings, and I've got a little library of all the hundreds of them
Exactly.
that I
I
keep
love
there and
it.
go search.
Yeah.
So one of the things that and just on a second note, thank you for writing the book. That's one of the
You're
things
welcome.
leaders.
Thank you.
You'll hear me say this again at the end. Some of the comments that Jim's making. Matter of fact, 2 or 3 spots in here, I probably should have stopped you and said, leaders, there's a rewind button on your phone. Go rewind and listen to the last 30 seconds. But as you listen, as we talk about this, followership is extremely important. There's a duality in followership. There's a power in that, and everybody.
Right.
There's two pieces I always talk about from a human perspective. There's a need to be inspired, not motivated. Inspired, the thing that lights you up.
Yeah.
There's motivation is extrinsic. And then the other part, because that gets you out, that's what gets you out of bed and sets you on fire. That's your drive. This is my truth, the North Star that I'm moving towards. And that's kind of that first thing. And the second piece is recognition. We need to come home at the end of the day when we sit down across the supper table with our wife or husband or family or whoever we do that with, dog,
Yes.
whoever you're having the conversation with, and be able to have a conversation about the day and feel
Yes.
recognized for the day.
Yeah. I love
That
it.
I brought value and I moved something forward.
Yeah. That's one of the, I have a 9-step, what I call the humble influence roadmap. And then step number 9 talks about reflecting on your purpose. And that's exactly what I mean by that. Taking time during your day to reflect on, the achievements, the accomplishments. How did you add value to somebody today? How did you advance the mission that you're working on? Those kinds of things. That reflecting on your quote unquote why, if you will, right? There's a large conversation around the word why, but I think that keeps you aligned with your personal mission and the mission that you're doing out in the world. Maybe that's your work. Maybe that's a volunteer position. Maybe that's in your relationships. How is it aligning, and just taking some time and that quiet reflection, or it could be, personal communication with your loved ones or those people that are in your inner circle. I think that's very important.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. So one of the things I do want to talk to you about today is, there's some quotes that I pulled out, but one of the ones I really love is followership is not weakness. It's the quiet engine of leadership.
Yes. Yep.
And I want to we can just maybe take a moment or two and talk about that, because there's a thing I talk about all the time, and I'll email it to you just after
this is
I call
great.
it the 5 lies, right? One of the fly number 1 is a leader has a perception that I have to be in control and I have to know all the answers, and I'm that person. That's lie number 1. And there's others. Misconceptions. But since I'm the grandson of a redneck, I tend to go right to the word lie. So the followership is not weakness. It's the quiet engine of leadership. I'd like to, how do you, when you're working in the work that you do and the conversations that you're having, because you're leading this message, how do you help a leader move from kind of that legacy thinking to that thinking about it's okay not to know it all. It's okay to develop strength through followership and the community that you can build out of that to get to your results, to get to that why that you're working towards.
Yeah, I've got maybe two points I can make on that. One, if it's okay to kind of go down the biblical wisdom, if that's okay with you and your audience. So hopefully I won't offend anybody by this, but one of the great stories is, I believe, the first calling of the first 2 disciples of Jesus. He was walking along the shore of Sea of Galilee, and there were Galilee, and there were two brothers, Simon, Peter, and Andrew, and they were just coming off the water fishing. And I can kind of relate to this story because I myself, that's my passion. I love music, but I love fishing a little bit more. And so I'm always on the water. And so when I hear about these two fishermen, may have had a rough day on the water and not caught much. And Jesus walks up to them and says, cast down your nets and come and follow me, and I will make you fishers of men.
Yes.
One of the most profound commands, if you will, invitation maybe is a better word. And those two guys, they laid down their nets and they said, yes, I'm going to go do it. They actually made a choice to go follow this guy who they had heard about, but they didn't really know. Right? They had heard about John the Baptist and kind of knew about him, but this Jesus guy comes on and he's like, come follow me. And so that just little story, it's in the Bible. I believe it to be true. Thousands of years later, I'm telling that story because those two guys, without those two guys and the movement that ended up becoming Christianity, if they didn't take those steps, I mean, maybe somebody else would have. God knows the whole plan, how it was all going to work out. But I love that because it's profound, because if you have people that are willing to say, yeah, I'm going to lay myself down and I'm going to come and be part of this mission, that to me is the most perfect example of followership. I love it, and I love that. But even in my own personal life, I mean, this is kind of bearing my soul, but when I was first put into a management role, my first leadership role inside of a company, I thought, yeah, I get to make the decisions. Everybody's going to just do what I say to do, and that was back in the, really the early 90s. Yeah. Right. And things were a lot different then. Okay. They were just a lot different. And you know what I'm talking about. Maybe some others know what I'm talking about, but it was just a different world. And here I come in and I was like, let's go. This is what we're going to do. And I was like a bull in a china shop. I knew it needed to be done, and by gosh, I was going to do it. Sure. Well, I was humbled at that point because I realized, man, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. And that's really when I began my leadership journey and started to pour in. I'm a big fan of John C. Maxwell and started reading his books and learning about, just empathy and curiosity and so forth. Yeah. Well, what's amazing, Doland, is that mindset, having this idea of being a servant, understanding that, you can multiply your output if you just have great people around you who you treat well and take care of and love them, right? They are going to go to bat for you. And then that is a multiplier effect. And so once I started understanding that and working on it, and I'm still a work in progress, I am by no means the perfect leader. I've got a long way to go on that. Yeah. But I do believe that the idea of having and equipping great followers and empowering them and teaching them. So my advice to a leader is, you got to equip your people. You got to get them trained up in the way of how to be an effective follower, because if you don't do that, then it's almost like you're pulling people when you just need to kind of bring them with you, lift them up as opposed to trying to drag them along. And so, I can maybe share a point or two about that as well. We hear a lot about the servant mindset, the servant leader, but I believe that, being, humbling yourself, the book's called Humble Influence. So you humbling yourself, saying, this is bigger than me is extremely important. Right. What I would also say is, understand the mission, like not just the leader, but the followers need to understand that. And I come at it from the point where you have somebody, like if I have somebody on my team that they don't believe every single thing that I say, that's okay. But they need to grasp onto something and then say, I want to be part of that. Yes. Right. Yeah. And so just understanding the mission and aligning yourself as a follower to the leader's vision, goals, mission, values, something has to jive, or else you're in the wrong place. And so those are things. And then I come at it with, key traits that I'm trying to, equip and look for with people. And we talk about people of excellence. I want people that serve without seeking the spotlight. That's a humility, trait. Curiosity, making sure that they're asking questions, understanding, exploring perspectives, being open to, to learning. that to me is an essential trait of a great follower. Having courage to speak up. I say this quite a bit, but it's kind of funny. Like, how many times have we been in a situation in business over the years where you put something into place and somebody in the back of the room will raise their hand and just say, I could have told you that wasn't going to work. I'm thinking, have the courage to tell us before we do it. That's yes. A great follower. That's a trait of a great follower, having courage to speak up, to even dissent when it's and doing it with respect when it's the appropriate time. And things like loyalty and proactivity. These are all leadership traits, but they're also important to be a great follower.
Yeah. I love all of those. There's so much to unpack there. So leaders, go back at least 60 seconds, probably longer, and go back to listen to what Jim said. And don't do it at 1.5, do it at 1.0 speed. Don't go fast. But no, it's funny because I think, Jim, a lot of leaders get hung up on there's a bunch of things that you talked about there that are very important. One of them is alignment. Right, that there's an understanding on where yes. we're moving towards, yes. And I think a lot of leaders, Jim, get hung up on this notion of everybody's got to completely agree with me, and it's a hard lesson, I think, in leadership to get to a state to where the agreement isn't what you're looking for, understanding is what you're seeking, yes. And then the commitment,
yes,
and it's and there's. You're kind of looking for that as the result. I still say this all the time, but being 72, a long time ago, I came up with somebody told me at one point one of my bosses one day said, if I have 3 people in the room and those 3 people always agree with me, I'm going to get 3 other people.
Yeah. Exactly. It's a great way of looking at it. And so, I think that's why when I talk about understanding the mission from the point of view of the follower, I'm in a following position in a lot of different things in my world. Okay. Sure. For instance, I serve on boards of directors, and I don't necessarily want to be the leader. I just tell me what to do. I'm going to go do it.
Right.
But I have to buy into something on the mission. I may not agree with everything, but you know what? I'm gravitating and hooking into right. The things that I'm passionate about. And I say, yeah, let's do that. I can forgo, I don't have to have everything my way. And I think that that's very true in any organization, and if you're trying to align yourself with people that are just yes people and, are going to agree with everything you want to do, it's not going to end well, for sure.
No. And even if they're in the room, I think sometimes, Jim, even if they're in the room, my experience has been when that person is shaking their head and saying, yeah, yes, I got it. Yes, I got it. There's no yes. There's a lot more it's a much deeper wound to uncover at that point.
Yeah. Well, we talked about purpose-driven organization. I mean, that's what I have in my company and it's taken years to get there. Okay. Is a culture of leadership. So I have surrounded myself with a team of 14 or 15 people that are just outstanding people first. Okay. They are quality individuals. From a marketing standpoint, they're also excellent marketers. Okay.
Sure.
And all the different roles, video, web, digital ads, whatever it might be.
Sure.
But when we have a meeting and I say, guys, this is my vision, and I get feedback, coming saying, hey, Jim, have you thought of this? I want them to point out the flaws in my thinking. And they are fully aware of that, number one. And I embrace that and celebrate that. And so it wasn't, like I said, it wasn't always that way, Doland. I had to learn that. And the faster you can learn that as a leader, and the faster you can learn that as a follower, I would also argue, the better everybody's going to be.
Yeah. And I think there's 2 sides to that. So I think that's what you just said, Jim, around from the leader's perspective, right? That's in that role at that moment, it is to embrace it and celebrate it.
Yeah.
And celebrate that willingness. You said something a little while ago, which was individuals having the courage that you're looking for. You're looking to instill a culture of courage, and you're looking for individuals with the courage. Yeah. So how have you built? And then I'll tell you a story. Then how do you, from a previous podcast guest, I love talking about Tom. How have you instilled that courage within the team? Is that something you're looking for at the hiring moment, or is that something that you probably yes, and then continue developing, sharpening that skill.
Yeah, it's both. Yeah, for sure. And when we go through onboarding or even recruitment of a candidate for a position that we have here at our Interaction Media, and I kind of like to talk about this because it's a again, we talk about mindset, but I
Sure.
look at it rather than hiring somebody, I refer to it as we select somebody. And
Perfect.
there's a difference there, just
Yeah.
I could tell as soon as I said it, you caught it. And I feel that team members, when we say, hey, you've been selected for this position, you're a part of this team because you were selected to be here, not
Yeah.
because we needed a warm body with a pulse. We want to go through that process and understand like these kind of traits that we're talking about. You mentioned loyalty is a good one. I mentioned even observation, like learning to be observant about what's going on in the marketing world. It's essential because everything is changing so fast.
Yes.
But I would argue all industries are in an inflection point, if you will, with AI coming on and all these things. There's massive shifts in everything,
Yeah.
and I think it started before 2020, but the pandemic exacerbated it and accelerated all of this. And what we're seeing now is you've got to be observant to the world around you. I kind of look at the world probably weirder from a more weird of a perspective than most people, because I try to find the positive and the beauty in everything, and
Sure.
I like doing that. But I think observation is one of those other key traits I think is just so important these days in terms of being a great follower.
Yeah, I think that's really important, Jim. I'm enjoying this conversation. I think it's really
Thank you.
important. One of the things that I love asking the question about is about possibility. Could it possibly be,
Yes.
which is kind of that reflective moment on, could it possibly be not as bad as we think it's going to be? Let's talk about the possibility and what
Yeah.
working towards that possibility could be. Let's come
Yeah.
at it from there.
I've been
Um,
using this phrase quite a bit over the last couple of years. Yes, and
Love that. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, doesn't have to be but or no or yeah.
No.
I
Yes.
like to try to yeah. So I like to try to find ways to say yes to things. Obviously
Yes.
limits and boundaries
Yeah.
and all that kind of stuff. But yes, and this.
Yeah. I love that. I
So
call that. I do similarly. I call it a conditional yes. Yes,
there you go.
and the
Yeah, there you
conditional
go. I love it. I love
conditional
it.
yes. So when
That's
you're
great.
so as your team, and we're past the time I promised we would be. So
That's
we'll
good.
only
This is
go.
great.
I've never found an elegant way to get out of the podcast. Sooner or later, I just say, okay, we're done. That's it. That's enough. Um, so as you're, in working with your team, which is very exciting. There's a kind of the here, your approach to it. One of the quotes that I pulled out this is just Dolan's offer back for a tip of the hat that you don't need that, but this quote stood out to me. You can't influence what you don't respect.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And because it kind of set me back thinking about the definition of respect. There's a component, and you said this in a fleeting moment just a couple of minutes ago, which was love your team.
Yep.
And love is a component of respect and love are closely, they're cousins,
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah.
Having originally when I was born in Alabama, I would call them cousins. So,
well, yeah, and respect is one of those things that, and when I wrote that quote, I was thinking about this too, because respect is one of those things where it actually, it's not just given; it has to be earned. And so as you earn respect and you do those things that we've been talking about throughout this conversation.
Sure.
Sometimes it takes a while to get that respect. It takes a while to earn the respect of the folks that are following you. It takes an effort of time and energy to earn the respect of the leader if you're in the follower position.
Yeah.
But all equally, I think important to realize, and probably everybody understands this, but in a flash, that respect can be lost. So we spend this time and energy and sometimes money and hard work and grind and grit building respect and earning respect because it's earned. It's earned, not necessarily deserved.
Yes.
There's a big difference, I think,
Oh, yeah.
But in an instant, it can be really disrupted and lost. And sometimes it's hard to even get that back. You think about any interpersonal relationship that you're in, whether you're dating or married or, your family, and, you build that respect and all of a sudden in one flash, it's all dust.
Yeah.
And so that saddens me, but that's the reality. So it's very important to not just hold that respect as something that you have and take it for granted. You have to earn it continually.
Yeah. And I think there was a friend of mine who's also coaching, and I was watching a video from his yesterday, and he was talking about a company that he was coaching and I've seen this in organizations I've led before, where you quit paying attention to your team, you quit, recognition stops, the team perceives that as a drop in respect, a drop in caring, performance drops, erosion occurs, and then it's a lift to recover. If you can recover it, it's a lift to recover that.
Absolutely. It's this, business is hard. Relationships are hard, man. It is. You're right. It's just like, I feel that when you're saying that point, I mean, when you're telling me that, it's like, wow, yeah, it's tough.
Yeah. It can be. And it's into your, I love having been a marketer too. There's who's the great Robert Cialdini, right? He talks about when you're building trust, it's 5 to 7 interactions and 1 interaction to break it.
Yeah. And in the marketing world today, we're trying to establish trust in 3 seconds.
Yes.
That's the attention span of a goldfish that people have today. So you're trying to get a point across in the first 3 seconds or whatever. So
that I refer to us as we are living in a headline economy. One headline.
That's right.
Then we spend the rest of our day trying to justify why we believe in the headline. Another podcast. We'll get into that.
That's right.
Marketing strategies and tactics.
That's right.
Would be fun that I would love to have a conversation with you at some point about why marketing matters.
Yeah.
Because I think that's a deep subject people don't fully understand, especially when you're doing it from a purpose-driven, internally and externally. That marketing matters done correctly. So when I guess a couple of things. As we wrap down the podcast, I'll formally announce that we're going to go do that. Two things. I love the conversation, one, about the lifeblood that you pour into the full life that you pour into your agency and what you do with your team, which automatically transcends into how you treat your clients and transcends into the results that you provide. For those who hear the podcast, there's 2 things I want them to do. I want them to come talk to you about your business, and then I want them to go buy your book. And all of that stuff will be in the show notes, and we don't need to worry about URLs and all that stuff here. But what type of clients do you work with? Is there a kind of client that you really love to work with? Or in those kind of clients, we're not for everybody, those kind of clients that probably aren't a good fit.
Yeah. Well, thank you for the opportunity to talk about that real quick. A couple of our verticals are video production. We're, like mentioned, that high end, whether it's a TV commercial or short form video, website development, digital, traditional, and social media buying. We love to do that work. The industries we love to serve, healthcare. It seems like a lot of agencies specialize in healthcare, but we're really, that was our very first client. 15 years we've been working in healthcare marketing and understand what it takes today to do that. The construction related and everything from engineering to, fabrication and industrial, and then financial services. Those are kind of our three main verticals that we like to focus on. But thank you for that. And then the book. is Humble Influence. It's Humble Influence Book, .com, humbleinfluencebook.com. And anybody that's interested in any of these topics, Doland, I would love to get on a call with them and just have a conversation if they're just wanting to learn more about these types of things. I've been doing some public speaking on the book, and that's kind of been a unique thing. It's way out of my comfort zone, if you will. I hate to use that phrase, but it is. But it's been a lot of fun doing that and just coming on shows like yours and talking with you about this. My hope is that somebody I can add value to them. Let's put it that way. I hope that I can add value to people, whether they're on this followership journey or a leadership path, to come in the middle and bring both of those together, because I think it's vitally important.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for that. And I will, listeners that are listening to the podcast, inside of both the show notes as they show up in all of the different platforms, which we know a lot. There's a lot of different platforms it shows up on. Inside of the show notes, there'll be all of the information in there to contact you. And I'm actually, Jim, rolling out so one of my missions is and not to do a shameless plug, but one of my missions is to move the podcast from entertainment to action.
Yeah.
And because it's fun to listen to stuff and go, oh, that's kind of a cool idea. But then what do you do with it? How do you go apply it? So I'm in the process of releasing a component to the podcast called the Backstage Pass, which will take every episode, all of the contact information, key highlights from the episode, and turn them into action steps that people could just go to the website and grab. So I will encourage you guys listeners to go do that. There's a lot of action steps in the book and in our conversation today. I think that I would suggest you go do that. And thank you for the offer for people to reach out. I will encourage listeners do reach out to Jim. So, well, as I promised at the very beginning, I'm going to close the podcast with a little more gratitude. My personal mission is to empower 1 million leaders, and I figure I got plenty of time to do that in my life yet still.
I love it.
So I want to just again tell you thank you for being here with me. I love the insights, the conversation about followership and the value of followership, and those that are in the middle that don't get a lot of attention.
Yeah. Which
I think a lot of coaches and focus on development miss that layer in the organizations where things happen. And that's critically important. So I want to thank you for being here, for sharing your wisdom and talking a bit, and good to meet a fellow musician.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, we definitely have to jam. And thank you, Doland, for having me on. This has been awesome. I've gotten a lot out of this. You've added a lot of value to me as well. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that. Thank you. Okay, listeners, 2 things always at the end of every podcast. The very first thing is please give the show a like, share, subscribe. If you're listening on Apple, leave a comment. It has nothing to do with the algorithms that create stuff. It has to do with the ability for people to see the podcast. When there are no like, shares, and follows, the podcast elevates. Fortunately, we're sitting in top 200 of something somewhere, I was told. So please do that. That's very important. The reason why that's important is I would like my challenge to you listeners is if you know another leader who can learn from what Jim talked about today, apply it to what they're doing, develop a deeper understanding, share the podcast with them. As we're all on a mission, talk about casting nets. As we're all on a mission, we can't do this. We can't cast nets by ourselves. We have to do this together. So awesome. Cast that net and then help another leader be a better leader. That moves us to 1 million, and that creates a better outcome for lots and lots and lots of people. So that note, thank you, sir. Appreciate you being here. Grateful for you today.
Appreciate you. Right. I'm grateful for you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to the next interview show. If today's conversation gave you something to think about or something to act on, follow the show. And share this episode with a leader you know who's ready to step up, because empowered leadership isn't a solo sport.